Good afternoon, everyone. It is David Schlotthauer here, back with another hurricane outlook and discussion for May the 15th, 2023. In this second upload of the day, we are actually going to be looking at your Atlantic hurricane season forecast for 2023. We're going to be looking at sea surface temperatures, the National Hurricane Center, and some changes that they made for a lot of us when tracking this year's season. Also, we're going to be looking at weather models, Saharan dust, and the overall outlook to the Atlantic hurricane season, including my very own personal forecast. So with that being said, here's a look at the very latest detailed GOES 16 true color satellite imagery provided by tropicaltidbits.com or Levi Cowan. And we can see that the Atlantic basin is entirely quiet. We're not seeing any disturbances. We're not seeing any areas of deep convection that could manifest into tropical depressions, tropical storms, or hurricanes. But I'll tell you what, we do have a couple of areas to watch that really not going to develop because of the shear that's in place. We have an area of interest right off the Bahamas. That's probably not going to develop at all. I'm giving it a 0% chance of tropical development here in the next 7 days. And we also have another area coming off of Africa, which is very low in latitude. That is also not going to survive the wind shear and dry air that is currently in place across the Atlantic. In fact, if we look at our satellite imagery here, we have a lot of this shear that is currently being cutting across from the westerly direction, and this is shear anywhere between 50 to 60 knots. So we are not seeing any favorable conditions at all whatsoever that will likely warrant any tropical disturbances anytime soon in the Atlantic. In fact, if we do take a look at our National Hurricane Center graphic page here, we can see that there is no tropical cyclones expected in the next, 7 days? Where's the 5 days at, right? We're going to be talking about that briefly in this video, why they extended the next couple of days in their outlook. So, like I said, nothing to worry about at all in the Atlantic basin, in the Gulf of Mexico, or in the Caribbean in the next 7 days. The entire week looks tropical free, which is good. So if you're doing any vacationing, if you're going down towards, say, Bermuda, if you're going towards Puerto Rico, the Windward, Leeward Islands, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, everything looks perfectly good. In fact, even if you go to, say, the Cabo Verde Islands off of Africa, looks also perfect to do any vacationing. So remember those changes that I just mentioned, why they extended the next couple of days instead of 5 days to 7 days? Well, let's kind of take a look at this and take a quick break from looking at the tropics. So one of the biggest changes is extending the long-range forecast from the previous forecast of 2 to 5 days. Remember that from last year, you would see 2-day tropical outlook chances and 5-day tropical outlook chances. Well, now they extended it. Now we're looking at 2 to 7 days, which means what? The 2 extra days gives us as forecasters much more better warning and alert to those that are watching these videos or watching my channel or simply watching the Weather Channel, correct? And so this is going to help out a lot. So they extended it from 2 to 5 days to now 2 to 7 days. The actual visual forecast cone provided by the National Hurricane Center will not be extended yet. So they're going to still keep the 5-day cone in mind, and they're not going to go to 7 days. Let's skip down here. There's some other things. You can find this article. I will put a link in the description below this video. There's a lot to read on this of the changes, but one of them is, again, extending that out to 2 to 7 days now, which is really helpful. Thank you, National Hurricane Center, for making that possible. So now let's take a look at our sea surface temperature map here from Cyclonicwx.com or Alex Boardham to making these images possible. All right. And so also a link will be in the description below this video leading to that website too. All right, so we can see sea surface temperatures are definitely above average. I know they don't seem like it, but yeah, that's a 26-degree isotherm water temperature line there that's in place. And usually that's way down here this time of the year. So it's a lot further north, which means what? Well, we're adding more heat to the ocean for the Atlantic hurricane season to start in June 1st. We're also warmer than average in the Gulf of Mexico and much warmer than average in the northwestern Caribbean. In fact, some of these waters right here off Jamaica as well as Cuba, really running warm, 28 to 29 Celsius. This is not above normal or below normal. These are actual sea surface temperatures. So we're running in the mid to upper 80s already in the northwestern Caribbean this early in the season. I mean, we're still 2 to 2.5 weeks away from hurricane season, and wow, it is definitely warmer than average. We can see this reflected in the sea surface temperature anomaly map here. Widespread warmer than average temperatures right off the Iberian Peninsula all the way across the main development region of the Atlantic, running anywhere between about 1.5 degrees to 3 degrees Celsius above normal. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it will have a huge impact this Atlantic hurricane season in a way that a lot of us do not want to have. We're looking at a possible pretty busy, furious season, especially out here away from land, where I think we're going to get a lot of named storms. In the Gulf of Mexico, we're running about 1 degree Celsius above normal, and in the Caribbean, anywhere between 0.5 degree to 1.5 degrees above normal. But the good news is, in the last 15 days, these sea surface temperatures have cooled a little bit, so not as significantly above average, but still definitely warmer than the long-term average. Even so, they have cooled off a little bit. We have lost about 1 degree Celsius with water temperatures in the last couple of weeks. Has cooled off a little bit out here across the western Atlantic into the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. But also these areas right here have warmed up roughly about 1 degree Celsius. So all this above average water is sloshing this way, which just means more upper ocean heat content will materialize just in time for the start of the Atlantic hurricane season. And speaking of that, when we take a look at our upper ocean heat content, all right, the physical oceanic division thing is not working. It's asking me to enter in my username and password. So evidently it is no longer for public domain. So instead we're using the University of Miami, Miami's upper ocean heat content map for better reference. So this is as of May the 15th. Oh wait, no, I'm ahead of myself here. So this is now, by the way, so May the 15th, 2023, and we can see the upper ocean heat content here is very important from year to year, okay? So I have done a yellow outline comparing each year, because we're going to have to compare this, right? Because we're well ahead of normal from the last few years. Okay, so this is this year, a lot of upper ocean heat content, anywhere between 75 to about 100 kilojoules per centimeter squared, which is quite significant. When we go back to 2022, we can see where that kind of stood out as. So not as further north as far as upper ocean heat content, it was more into the Gulf of Mexico. And then when we look back even further, 2021, you know, it's even peeled further back here, okay? So we're going to put green on that, okay? And then when we go back further, let's go back, it's even a little further south. We will use blue for this one right there. So what I'm saying is, if we compare the last 4 years here, from 2020 to now 2023, much further east here with the upper ocean heat content, especially right in here, even further north across the main development region. So what this tells us is there's a lot of heat energy yet to be expelled this Atlantic hurricane season if we get a very busy season. And the further north this actually goes, if we get any tropical wave that does this and moves kind of like this, spend more time over here in across the Atlantic where there's more upper ocean heat content, versus if this was a lot further south, these systems would likely spend lesser time over a patch of upper ocean heat content. I'm not saying that this will lead to a very busy season, but I mean, there's a lot of heat being stored ahead of time already that wasn't used up last year. And so we're going to use a lot of that heat energy potentially for this season. And if that doesn't get used up, then it just builds and builds and builds. All right, so with that being said, here's a look at the Atlantic hurricane and tropical storm activity chart. This was updated 3 years ago. And so I'll tell you right now, we're literally in mid-May. I mean, there's typically no tropical storms or hurricanes this time of the year anyways. We're at the very low end of the chart, so nothing to worry about anytime soon just yet, okay? And this is where we're headed. And usually climatological peak usually doesn't get going until late July into early August. That's when the Atlantic hurricane season really wakes up vigorously with a lot of tropical wave activity coming off of Africa. And those are the seedlings for possible tropical depressions, storms, or hurricanes. So we have a long way to go. This is only the 15th of May and not September the 15th, because literally in about 4 months or 3 months from now, it is going to be, 4 months from now, it's going to be very busy, right? That means June, July, August, September. Yeah, 4 months. I was close. 4 months from now, it's going to be very busy, especially for early September is when climatological peak typically happens. So now let's take a look at our numerical models, right? Because we looked at the sea surface temperatures. They are very warm. We already looked at our upper ocean heat content. That's very favorable, right? We even looked at the graphical page of the National Hurricane Center map, because that's part of these discussions. But now it's time to actually look ahead at, are the models hinting at anything that could develop across the Atlantic into right off the eastern seaboard, the Gulf of Mexico, or the Caribbean? Well, I'll tell you right now, no. But we're going to look at the models anyway, so you can follow along, okay? So let's go forward in time here, and we can see this is the European model. So what this map shows us is vorticity, how much spin there is in the atmosphere, right? The more spin we get that is concentrated, okay, we want to see really dark spots. So for an example, let's go to the Western Pacific, because that's going to show us a very intense typhoon that might develop. So we're just going to quickly look at that. Don't click off the video, folks. We're going to go right back to the Atlantic. This is what I'm looking for in the Atlantic, right? These balls of intense vorticity spin in the atmosphere at 5,000 feet above the surface. So if we get reds, dark red colors, that indicates a lot of vorticity, lots of spin in the atmosphere. Vortex cyclonic spin, which that's what we get, right? When we get these balls of spin, it's usually a disturbance, right? In the form of a tropical storm, hurricane, or major hurricane. So what are we looking for? Well, the same thing in the Atlantic. And right now, there's just nothing. Over the next 5 days, there is nothing but a strong, stout subtropical ridge out here, keeping a lot of the convection very far south from moving northward. And we got some Saharan dust and drier air, and of course, a lot of shear to deal with. So right now, the Atlantic, nothing. Nothing to worry about right now. However, right off the Carolina coast, we are watching a weak disturbance. Now, no one has talked much about this, which is a good thing, because I really don't think it should be really talked about very much just yet. But it is an entity that we have to monitor on the Euro and the GFS model, as it is hinting a little bit of a disturbance. Very weak, nothing innocuous. We're not seeing a hurricane or a tropical storm, just a little bit of a disturbance. And yeah, we're headed in towards late May, where things are going to become favorable for these type of systems. If they move off of the U.S., like Arthur and Bertha, they were off of the United States and they developed into tropical storms, right? simply from a complex of thunderstorms. In this case, we're not going to see that, and we're going all the way out to 10 days looking very quiet. That's on the Euro. Let's take a look at the GFS model, and very similar here. Really nothing to watch at all in the Atlantic. Now, the GFS model wants something over here near Florida to develop. Okay, are you guys following along here with me? Hopefully you all, I'm not making you guys bored at all, okay? But this is a discussion. This is what you clicked on the video for, okay? So we can see here for Florida, we are seeing a little bit of a disturbance. This may try to develop into something. Now, that's the GFS. We all know the GFS is Ricky Morty. It's going to be doing Fantasyland 10 days out. We can't believe it because the Euro's not showing it, and the Canadian is also not indicating it either. So there is very low confidence in this forecast that a disturbance like that would develop right off the Florida coast. But if it does, it would be something to watch closely for. And then far out in time, nothing coming off of Africa, looking very quiet in the meantime. So now with that being said, here's a look at the Saharan dust. Another variable that we like to look at is how much dust comes off of Africa. It's dry, dusty, stable air that keeps tropical cyclones from forming, okay? It's another way to put a lid on the atmosphere so we don't get these systems rapidly intensifying because there's so much dust. So when we go forward in time here, the dust, not going to be much of an issue at all. That's a concern, right? Because if this were to be, say, July or August under a favorable environment, then we would be talking about a lot of tropical waves coming off of Africa and them developing into named storms because you don't have a lot of dust out here. You don't have a lot of stable, dusty air to put a lid on things. And dust is also notorious of cooling down the Atlantic Ocean because a lot of the radiation from the sun gets reflected back out as space. It filters out, it back filters, they call it. And so when we have a lot of dust, that cools sea surface temperatures down just a little bit with the enhancement of trade winds. We're seeing the opposite. We're not seeing dust, nor are we seeing strong trade winds. So there's going to be a lot of warming out here probably in the next couple of weeks that might get some more attention from a lot of meteorologists out there. But right now, dust, very, very hard to come by. Just very little amounts. In fact, some of it is not even making it over towards the leeward or windward islands. In fact, there is no dust particles to be even found here by May the 24th. So air is going to be very clean, not much dirt in the air. That's going to be great for being outside and walking the dog or doing anything like that. Okay, so that's a look at the Saharan dust. Now, let's take a look now at the climate forecasting system. Back to tropical tidbits yet again. So here's a look at it. So everyone's probably wondering, are we really going to have a average to above average Atlantic hurricane season? Well, it depends on your own opinion. My opinion is that we're going to probably see a below average season. And the reason why is we have El Nino that is developing. And if that thing develops quick enough, we get the shear. We're already seeing high levels of shear, actually significantly stronger than average in the Caribbean. If that continues, I think we're not going to have a very busy Caribbean season. However, we might have a busier season up here across, say, the right off the coast of the United States, maybe in the central Atlantic basin, maybe in the Gulf of Mexico, and way out here in the main development region. But I think in my case, I predict a below average season in the Caribbean with a below average to near average season out here. The thumbnail really illustrates that when you clicked on the video. So going forward, we can see for July, for August, really not a lot of tropical activity here. Below average rainfall, which means what? Below average tropical activity, including maybe for portions of the Gulf of Mexico. And that's because of that shear from the El Nino that tries to develop. However, we do have some tracks of enhanced precipitation here that might lend possible named storms or tropical depressions or so. But in my own opinion, probably going to be one of those average seasons. Okay, this continues into October. I mean, look at this. Very dry down here in the Caribbean. Really dry over here in the Windward and Leeward Islands. Possibly some drought concerns there, including for the Gulf of Mexico through October. Now, of course, you're going to see above average rainfall by December. That's just atmospheric rivers that are going to likely develop from the Inzo region over here in the Eastern Pacific. Now, the CANSIPs, very similar with my prediction here. Below average here for the Caribbean, near average, possibly above average precipitation anomalies for the Dominican Republic, for, say, Cuba, maybe for the Bahamas. But really, it's going to be a tough season. It's going to be tough to forecast because we do have a very warm Atlantic, which is asking for a busy season, but we have El Nino, which is asking for a quiet season. So there is a tug of war here, and models are having a hard time grasping for answers exactly how this season is going to pan out. But I'm leaning towards a average to below average season, and I don't think I'm going to change it much this year. Okay, so then this is the NMME model. This is the North Multi-Model Ensemble. I think I got that right. It's a tongue twister in itself. It's also predicting below average rainfall and precipitation in the Caribbean, just like what we have going on right now. Now let's go forward. Is it showing the same thing? Near average precipitation in the Caribbean and the Gulf, okay, in July, and then going into August, really quiet. So yeah, it's not gonna be a very active period. I think maybe one named storm, and if it is named, it's gonna be a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm going through the Caribbean. And if it does, it's not gonna do much. It's gonna be a very decoupled type system, I predict. So now the background state. Now that we talked about our precipitation anomalies in the Atlantic Basin, now let's take a look at our background state, what we call the MJO, or the Madden-Julian Oscillation. This is basically the European Model Ensemble Prediction System Control 200 millibar velocity potential anomaly. So simply to put this, areas here in the blue and turquoise green color indicate a lot of thunderstorm convection, upward motion being represented by the model. And down here is a Mercator map. So hopefully you didn't lose me. Ooh, wait, I gotta switch scenes here. Sorry. There we go. You guys can see it now. Can you? Can you? All right, there we go. So again, above average here, you look down on the bottom of the map, and there it is. You can see above normal upward motion expected there for the Atlantic, sinking motion over this the Eastern Pacific, and then you get the idea. So what this means is this is basically a seedling ground and a favorable ground for tropical cyclones if they develop off of tropical waves, right? We need the background state to become favorable. It's not just sea surface temperatures or anything like that. The wind shear has to decrease, our dust has to decrease, and our atmosphere has to be moist and unstable. Now, when we look at the, this is from Ben Knoll. He tweeted this back on May the 4th, when he tweeted this. May 9th. He did, yeah, May 9th. So when we look at this, this is a lot of upward motion expected over Africa into the Atlantic Basin. Also another coupled or a multi-cell or competing rising cells over the Eastern Pacific too, which could also give a very busy East Pacific season, which is very likely at this moment. But question marks are here on exactly how busy the Atlantic hurricane season will be. As what you're about to see, there's some forecasts that are very bullish and are calling for a very crazy Atlantic hurricane season, which I really doubt that will actually happen. So the European model MJO forecast is really stuck over here in the Western Pacific, and it's probably going to stay there since we do have El Nino trying to develop. And this is going to eventually get into the Eastern Pacific, probably by late May into early July. So here's a look at my Atlantic hurricane season forecast. Let me get my face out of the way here so you all could actually see the entire map or the entire graph that I have. Yes, I made this. Yes, I did with my own research. So tropical cyclone risk does predict 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. The University of Arizona, again, there's that bullish forecast. 19 named storms, 9 of those will become hurricanes, and 5 of those could become major hurricanes. I mean, what in the freak are they on that one? South Carolina. South Carolina University there, expecting to see a near average or a slightly below average season. 13 named storms, 6 of those hurricanes, and 5 of those major hurricanes. The Weather Channel, pretty average here, expecting to see 15 named storms, 7 of those hurricanes, and 3 of those major hurricanes. And then when we look at Penn State, that's a new one that we added, 12 to 20 named storms, and of course they don't forecast hurricanes or major hurricanes. And then of course my low-end forecast or my ensemble forecast, this is me, 9 to 13 named storms. I am forecasting a below average season. No doubt we're going to have a very busy season at this point. 4 to 8 of those could become hurricanes and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. Now, my high-end forecast is even calling for a near-average season. 11 to 15 named storms, 5 to 8 hurricanes, and 2 to 5 major hurricanes. All right, well, that is going to do it in this video, folks. If you did enjoy the video, consider sharing this, liking, and subscribing. You guys are awesome. I love you all a lot, and I am looking forward to tracking the Atlantic hurricane season for you all. This will be the last Atlantic hurricane season forecast until June 1st, until otherwise something pops up and we get alerted into making one of these videos. But routine outlooks will start on June 1st on this YouTube channel. All right, but otherwise, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching.